So first of all, welcome to the future of Mac. Okay, and today I just want to introduce to you some of the key lineups for Apple new product. So again, before I start, I just have a disclaimer is that whatever I share today is purely for educational purpose. Okay, if you are already invested and if you want to buy, please do your own due diligence. I think it's very important for you to also double check and make sure that the information that I share with you today is correct. Alright. So this is the key product, okay, that is just being launched. Okay, it's called the M1 chip. Okay, it's called the M1 chip. Okay, but what is so exciting, okay, is that this particular chip, it is so powerful and it is actually being used in some of the key Mac, okay, in terms of the product lineup. So what is being used for this particular chip called the M1 chip? As you can see over here, we have the MacBook Air, we have the Mac Mini, as well as the MacBook Pro. What happened is that this M1 is actually a brand new chip, okay, and this is what we call the Apple silicon chip, and this is actually the first chip that is being done in-house, which means that Apple actually combined with ARM, okay, to actually design as well as manufacture this particular chip. So in the past, if you, let's say you buy a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro or a Mac Mini, okay, previously the chip is being used is by Intel. I'm sure you have heard of Intel. So previously, all your MacBook Air, your MacBook Pro, your Mac Mini, everything, okay, the CPU, the GPU, everything is actually by Intel. Okay, so this is actually the first chip that is being done in-house, okay, and it's called the Apple silicon chip. So as you can see, the pricing, right? First we just talk about pricing. I feel that it is very, very reasonable. Okay, in fact, I think before we actually done this, I've done the survey on the Telegram. And I think that most of you actually say that it's going to be 1999. Alright, the highest tier. But in fact, as you can see, the lowest pricing MacBook Air starts as low as $999. Alright, and of course the Mac Mini, which is supposed to be the desktop, okay, which is supposed to be the desktop of Apple, is at a starting price of $699, which is amazing. And of course, we have the MacBook Pro, which is a starting price of $1299. Later, I'm going to touch on what is the difference between these three, other than the appearance, okay? And of course, what happened is that when it comes to all this new chip, okay, people always talk about, you know, is this going to be a better performance chip, or is this going to be a better efficiency chip? That means, is it going to be the battery can last longer or things like that, you know? So seldom you actually find a chip that can actually perform both, okay, at the same time. But in the case of this M1 chip, okay, like what we mentioned over here, it is the best of both worlds. So if we compare this particular new Mac series with the new M1 chip as compared to the previous model, the current model right now, in terms of performance, it is way better. Okay, it is way better. Later I will show you all the figures. And in terms of the efficiency, it is also a lot better. So this is totally a new leap of technology advancement in terms of the Apple chip. So in terms of this particular chip, what does it consist of? As you can see, it has an 8-core CPU. Okay, it has an 8-core CPU and it has up to 3.5 times faster CPU performance. Alright, so out of this 8-core, as you can see at the bottom, it features 4 high-performance core as well as 4 high-efficiency core. Okay, so just remember this portion. Out of this 8-core, 4 of them is high-performance core. The other 4 is high efficiency core. So that is just the CPU itself. Okay, as you can see that previous model, right? Okay, the previous current model only has 4 core, but right now it actually has 8 core. So can you see that it is actually a double in terms of just the CPU? But it is not just that, because it is not just faster. This new M1 chip actually is a lot more efficient in terms of the battery, in terms of the energy usage. Okay, so they actually did a comparison between the current model as well as the previous model. Okay, based on the 4 core, it uses only 10% of the previous energy. Okay, running on the same spec, the current model is using only 10% of the previous, okay, Mac. So you can see that this is super energy saving. And in terms of the GPU, now we talk about the graphic. So the new Apple M1 chip, in terms of the, we just talk about this thing called the teraflop. That's how they actually calculate how good the graphic is. Okay, this is an integrated graphic card That means the GPU and the CPU is all combined together into one single chip. Okay, that's what we call integrated. So in terms of the integrated chip, this is pretty much the best in the market. Okay, as you can see that the teraflop for the new Apple M1 is at 2.6. The previous model is at 1.12. So you can see just by the number itself, you can see that this is already almost 2.5 times better. Okay, this is almost 2.5 times better. And if you compare it to the AMD 5600, so we'll be looking, how come the AMD 5600 is so high? It is because this is a separate graphic card. This is a dedicated graphic card. So of course, in terms of the dedicated graphic card, you know, you can't compare apple to apple. So if we compare just the integrated itself, this is the best in the market, okay, by far. So in terms of the CPU performance versus the power, this is what Apple actually gave us, okay. They actually mentioned that in terms of the CPU, it is easily 2 times faster as compared to the previous model. And it actually uses only 25% of the power that is required by the previous model to perform at this particular spec. So like I said, it's more powerful, plus is a lot more efficient. So in terms of the battery life, so just now we were talking about the power, so we know that this is super powerful. The CPU is at least 2 to 3 times more, the GPU is 2 to 3 times more. In terms of the battery life, that's the amazing part. You can see, based on the previous model, on the Intel chip, okay, that MacBook Air can do 12 hours. But if you look at the new M1 chip, it is 18 hours. That is a 50% jump in terms of your battery life. Alright, and we know that for people who actually buy a laptop, battery life is one of the things that is really critical. Especially imagine today if you are able to fly on a plane, or if you are watching a movie at a cafe. Can you imagine the additional hours that actually helps? So it is actually very important, especially for people who buy MacBook. They want a long-lasting battery life. So the new MacBook Air is able to do 18 hours, and the new MacBook Pro is able to do 20 hours, okay, of video. So you can actually watch video for 20 hours. Right, so this is again, this is what is being presented by the Apple. Okay, 15 hours of wireless web. That means you are connecting to the internet at a cafe, and you're surfing the internet. So 15 hours. If you're just playing a video, okay, something that is already inside your laptop without connecting to the internet, that is 18 hours. And of course, for the MacBook Pro, it's even better. It has 17 hours of wireless web and 20 hours of video playback. So just by looking at this, you can already see that the efficiency is way higher as compared to the previous model. Alright, so over here, okay, let me just touch on this. So I've also compared, right, okay, not just the MacBook itself. I actually go to Google and find out the top battery life performance, okay, out of the top 25 laptop that is available in the market. And you can look at the top 5. Okay, the top 5, the first is of course Asus, followed by LG, then Samsung, then Dell. The best is so far 16 hours, okay, which also means that with this new MacBook Pro, using the new M1 chip, okay, it actually clinched the top spot with 18 hours and 20 hours of battery life. Alright, so in terms of battery life, okay, MacBook, currently they actually dominate the market with this new model. So how do they actually do it? Let's look at how come Apple is able to come up with this technology shift. Actually, it's because of two main things that they actually changed. Number one is the 5 nanometer. If you actually look at some of the videos that I have talked about previously when it comes to NVIDIA, as well as I talk about TSMC, I mentioned that Apple is actually one of the largest customer for TSMC. Okay, and of course, a huge part of it goes to the 5 nanometer process. So TSMC is currently the world-leading wafer manufacturer plant. Okay, and 5 nanometer is currently the most high-tech technology. So this number, right, like I said, the smaller the better. For those of you who are new to this, okay, 5 nanometer is the best, is the highest tech. Okay, followed by 7 nanometer, and of course we have the 14 nanometer. Just to give you a glimpse of the current market comparison. Okay, for example, if you are looking at a laptop right now, okay, let's look at AMD. AMD has one of the latest CPU, which is the Ryzen. Okay, the Ryzen 5 series. So the Ryzen 5 series is actually built on a 7 nanometer process. Okay, a 7 nanometer process. And if you look at Intel, Intel is currently running at a 14 nanometer process. Okay, and like I said just now, the smaller the number, the better it is, because the smaller it is means that, okay, this 5 nanometer is basically the size of the we call it the transmitter. Okay, so the smaller it is means that in a single chip you can actually put in more transmitter. So with more transmitter, it actually means that it's going to be a lot more efficient, and you can actually pack more items inside, pack more juice inside. So in short, 5 nanometer is actually one of the key breakthrough that they actually have. Okay, and that is why this product is super efficient, especially when it comes to the battery life. And the next thing that makes this so powerful is actually the better chip design. So just to also share with you, let's say in the previously when you buy a laptop, you realize that, right, what happened is that for most laptop, your CPU, your graphic card, which is your GPU, and your RAM, they are all separate components. Okay, I repeat, so in the past when you buy your laptop, the CPU, the GPU, as well as the RAM, they are all separate components. Alright, so sometimes they might even use different supplier, okay, to actually produce all these things. But what happened is that for the new MacBook M1 chip, you realize that this is what we call a unified memory architect, which means that this particular M1 chip, the size of a small rectangle or square, okay, inside this particular chip, it consists of the CPU, the GPU, as well as the RAM. So everything is inside this particular chip. Alright, so the reason about this better chip design is that like what we mentioned over here, it can run faster, use less power, and it can stay cooler, and when built in large quantity, it can be considerably cheaper to produce. So I think this is very important. So just by changing this particular chip design, they are able to make Mac run faster, use less power, remains cooler, that means temperature remains lower, and of course when you produce in bulk, like Apple, when they produce in bulk, it is actually cheaper. Okay, it is actually cheaper. So this is one of the, I would say, one of the reason why Apple is actually leading in this particular area. And just now we talk about the hardware. So we talk about the CPU, the GPU, and of course we talk about this new design of the 5 nanometer chip. So for Mac, right, why are they so powerful is because they don't just do the hardware. Mac is also super good at the software portion. And that is where, okay, with this new product launch, they are also coming out with this new Mac OS called the Mac Big Sur. So let me share with you, for Mac, right, what they are doing right now is they are actually combining, or rather integrating, both the hardware as well as the software together. Alright, so the hardware is of course the new M1 chip, and in terms of the software, in terms of this Mac Sur, okay, one of the key feature, okay, like I said, okay, is that in future the iPhone and iPad apps can now run directly on the Mac. So what does this mean? In the past, okay, for example, you go to the Apple stores and you actually download your app, okay, but you realize that the Apple stores on your iPhone that does not work on your MacBook. Okay, your MacBook has its own different iOS, okay, or rather different Play Store. So certain software can run on your phone, it cannot run on the laptop. Alright, but what happened is that with this new integration of the Mac Sur, okay, pretty much everything can be combined. So whatever games you are playing on your phone, you can also play on your laptop in the future. So what this actually means is that today, if let's say you are a developer, you create a platform, okay, what happened is that now your platform, right, it no longer just apply to iPhone, it can also be used for MacBook user. So you realize that now the target audience is a lot larger, okay, and of course the usage of your software is actually even more diverse, which also means that more developer is going to put in the effort to come up with, you know, a product that can be actually placed on the Apple Store, so that both the iPhone as well as the MacBook is able to actually use together. So that is something that is really powerful. And of course, like what Mac actually mentioned is that this particular software actually makes Mac run even faster. Okay. So as you can see, the Mac OS Big Sur is actually optimized for the M1 chip. Okay, so with that, what happened is that, okay, with M1, things user do every day will feel noticeably faster and smoother, and just like iPhone and iPad, the Mac now instantly wakes from sleep. Okay, and somehow this is actually one of the joke that they actually mentioned during the announcement, is that when you actually open up, for example, today, most of the Apple user, if you realize, right, they don't shut down their laptop, right? Okay, they just close the MacBook, and basically your Mac goes into sleep mode. So when you want to work, what happens is that you actually open up the MacBook and it kind of just starts. So in the past, maybe you need to wait for about 3 seconds or 4 seconds, and the thing will actually comes to life. But what happened is that with the new Mac, sir, they actually mentioned that the Mac instantly wakes from sleep. So the moment you open the laptop, if in fact halfway while it is opening, your Mac already started. So that is something that they're just telling you that it is a lot faster when it comes to the M1 plus combining with this Mac OS called the Big Sur. So now we also want to understand a little bit in terms of the revenue generator for Apple. Okay, so this is not so much of the latest news or the latest product, but rather based on the overall company on its own. I just actually shared with all of you a little bit. iPhone is actually right now the largest revenue contributor for Apple. Okay, as you can see on the chart on the left hand side, iPhone actually contributes to about 40.9% of the revenue for the fourth quarter 2020. So that is a huge chunk. Okay, so you know that Apple actually make a lot of money from your iPhone. So which means that in the event, if let's say iPhone were to perform worst, okay, basically this would have a huge impact on the revenue as well as the profit for Apple directly. And we can see that for Mac, right, it's actually contributed about 14%. And of course, the next one that is actually one of the largest is actually this particular portion called the services. So Mac actually make a lot of money selling their Mac services and of course selling their ecosystem as well. So what happened is that, right, okay, if you look at the right hand side, okay, with the new Mac OS, right, they will be able to fully integrate the iPhone app together with the new MacBook, as what I've just mentioned. So what happened is that the use of app on both iPhone and MacBook will be seamless, and this is very important to me. Why? Because I feel that if you are able to connect the iPhone as well as the MacBook together equal into one similar product, okay, similar ecosystem, okay, it actually make the whole Apple ecosystem even more powerful, okay, and even more sticky. Because I know that there are a lot of people who some people who use the MacBook but don't use the iPhone. Okay, maybe I don't know about you guys, but how many of you here, you use the MacBook Pro, or you use some of the, for example, you use iPad but you do not use iPhone one? Can you just type in 555? Let me just see how many of you are using that. Okay, that means you are using, maybe you're using a MacBook Pro, you're using a MacBook Air, or you're using the iPad, but you are not using an iPhone. Alright, and of course there are people who are opposite, they're using the iPhone but they actually use a Windows MacBook, Windows laptop and things like that. Alright, so we have Ramat over here. Okay, yeah, so for me it's the same thing. I'm using a MacBook Air right now, okay, but I don't actually use an iPhone. Okay, in fact I'm using the Huawei P30 because I love the camera. But what happened is that with this new integration, okay, it actually makes me feel like moving back into the iPhone, because I realized that, hey, okay, with this new Mac, right, I know that, okay, the laptop is definitely super good. So I'm probably going to get the MacBook, okay, definitely, okay, for the new CPU and the new GPU and the super long battery life. And so with all the app that I have inside my laptop, okay, and that is where I also want to make sure that I have the iPhone, so that whatever I use on the iPhone can be connected to the Mac, and whatever I use on Mac can also be used on the iPhone. And of course, you know that for people who use the Apple ecosystem, you probably will get the EarPod, the AirPod, as well as you're going to get the Apple Watch, and you're going to get a lot of other stuff that comes with the Apple logo as well. So that is what makes Apple so powerful. It is the whole ecosystem. And you can see that with this new M1 chip and with this new software, they are actually integrating everything together even more seamless. Okay, so that to me is super powerful. So if you're learning something so far, can you just type in 888? If you're learning something so far, can you just type in 888? Okay, today will not be a very long session, alright? But I hope that just up until now you realize that this is super powerful. This new product lineup from Apple is super powerful. So right now, I also want to share with you in terms of the financial for Apple, especially for those of you who are new to Apple or who are new to investing. Okay, why I personally love Apple so much is, let's take a look at this. So this is the financials of Apple. Okay, the arrows are basically those that I actually place emphasis on. So as usual, what I always look at is revenue, growing revenue. So if you look from the left to the right, from 2011 all the way to 2020, can you see that this company is making more and more revenue? So collecting more and more money, selling more and more iPhone, selling more and more MacBook, selling more and more iPad. Then in terms of the earnings per share, how much money they are making at the end of the day, it is also increasing year after year. Okay, so increasing revenue, increasing earnings per share, which is fantastic. And in terms of the cash flow, which is under the free cash flow, you can also see that they are all positive as well as growing as well. So these three things, they are all pass. Okay, they are all a pass for me. And moving on to the next part, whereby we look at the efficiency of the MacBook, the Apple. Okay, net margin, we are looking at more than 10%. Okay, net margin, we are looking at more than 10%. And you can see over here, this is 20%. So double of what I'm looking out for, which is amazing. And of course, ROE, we are looking at above 15%. This company has a ROE of 73%. Okay, so this is really crazy. And of course, last but not least, in terms of the interest coverage, all right, we are looking at more than 5, and this company has got 24. Okay, so in terms of the financial, I have nothing to complain. But pretty much, if you look at the 6 criteria that I have just mentioned, Apple itself actually passes all of them. Okay, so to me, I think to a lot of people, when it comes to investing in Apple, what they are actually concerned about is that the sales of iPhone is actually dropping. Okay, this is a fact that we need to understand, is that Apple sales has actually been dropping since 2018. Okay, of course, the competitor is really strong from Samsung as well as from Huawei. Okay, but of course, we also know that because of Donald Trump and of course because of the relationship between US and China, Huawei sales, I believe they are kind of affected. And of course, Huawei, the latest Huawei, they actually can't use a lot of the US-based product. For example, Google and a lot of things, they can't actually use. So as a result of that, what happened is that I believe that there will be a lot of Huawei customer moving out of Huawei, so they can actually move to Samsung, they can move to, I don't know, Xiaomi, Oppo, and some other brands. Okay, but at the same time, there will be people who actually move back into the Apple iPhone. And for people like me, for example, okay, I am actually considering moving back to Apple. Right. Somehow or another with all the whole ecosystem of Apple building up, it does makes me want to feel like going back to Apple. So maybe I just want to check with you. How many of you feel that I should go back to Apple? If you think I should go back to Apple, can you just type in 111? And if you feel that I should not go back to Apple, I should use Android, type in 222. How many of you feel that I should use Apple? Type 111. If you feel that I should not use Apple, type 222. Okay, now I know who is the Apple hater. I know there are some Apple hater over here. Android. Yeah, I love Android. In fact, no complaints about Android. I definitely love Android. Okay, so let's look at the key focus. I'm going to just do a summary of what I've just shared with you. So when it comes to the key focus today, after this particular announcement made by Apple, what we want to focus on is actually the real performance. So even if you look at a lot of gurus, if you go to YouTube and just search Apple new product, a lot of the people, they're actually asking, because this is what Apple released. All this data, all this chart that I've just shown you is just based on Apple telling you how good their laptop is. But of course, the product is not out in the market yet. It is going to be launched November 17, which is a couple of days later. So what happened is that the moment the product is out in the market, there will be a lot of people who is going to do a review. They're going to do the test. They're going to compare it with the Intel laptop. They're going to compare it with AMD laptop. So I think that is something that we want to focus on. Once it is out in the market, go and watch all this YouTube of all this comparison between the new MacBook as well as the other product, and see whether is it really so powerful as what Apple actually promised. And I think real application is very important, especially when it comes to gaming as well as editing software. So when it comes to editing, the new GPU is going to be a huge advantage to it. Okay, because the previous model for MacBook in terms of the GPU, it is definitely a lot less powerful. Okay, and of course, a lot of people who buy Mac, they actually do a lot of video editing related. Okay, and of course, I know a lot of photographer and all that, they all love to use Apple product. So with this new advancement in terms of the GPU, okay, I also want to hear the real feedback lah. So once it is out in the market, how is it going to be? Is it really good lah for especially all the video editor and all the animators and all that? Okay, how is it going to perform? And although this is not supposed to be a gaming laptop, okay, but if you look at the presentation actually shared by Apple, they do mention that you can actually play a full 4K game with full frame, okay, and which means that basically you can play a lot of games, okay, even with a MacBook. So I think that is something that will be beneficial, okay, especially for people who love a MacBook and at the same time they want to play game. I think right now they might have this particular product that suits what they need. So that is one of the key focus that we'll be looking out for, moving forward. And of course, the second one is because of this new vertical integration, which means that Apple right now, they actually produce their own chip. Everything is done in-house instead of getting from Intel. So because of this, right, they are supposed to become more profitable. Okay, they are supposed to become more profitable. Okay, so what happened is that probably we also want to look at the next quarter for Apple in terms of the gross margin of the Mac, of the new Mac. Does this actually push up the gross margin? That means does Apple actually makes more money from every laptop? Okay, moving forward. Alright, so whether or not they sell more is another issue, but what happened is that every laptop they should make more money because the cost of production is supposed to be lower since everything is done in-house. Alright, so that will be something that a lot of people, especially investors, will be focusing on, the gross margin. And last but not least, I would say that, okay, it's actually about the market share. So will the new Mac gain more market share, especially in the midst of COVID-19 with more people working from home? So if you look at the latest earnings report from Apple, they actually mentioned that the Mac actually has a huge jump in terms of the number. Okay, so partly, of course, it's because of COVID-19. I know it is not just about Apple. A lot of other laptop brands, they are doing extremely well as well because people are buying laptop, people are buying desktop, people are upgrading and things like that because now everybody is working from home. So hopefully, okay, this thing is going to continue with more and more people working from home. You will probably continue to, upgrade your laptop, upgrade your desktop as well. So for people who are buying the new laptop or desktop, I would say that right now, if you look at the market, personally for me, if you look at the whole market right now, based on the new spec of the MacBook, I would say that they dominate. Okay, at the new MacBook, in terms of the spec, in terms of the price, in terms of the battery life, it is the best product out there. And I would say that the second place is pretty much quite far off from Apple. Okay, and so for those of you who are looking for a laptop, maybe you can do really consider the MacBook in terms of power, in terms of graphics, in terms of battery life, in terms of the look, in terms of, I don't know, having the Apple behind your laptop, it looks cool, So I do see that Apple might be getting quite a fair bit of market share with this new product in the market. And again, we need to understand this. So if you look at the competitor of MacBook, so we have, for example, Acer, we have Lenovo, we have Asus. The thing is, they are all using other people. They are all using Intel CPU or they are using AMD. And in terms of the new product from Intel as well as AMD, you realize that they are still using the 7nm. So again, in terms of technology, it is pretty far off. And in terms of pricing, because they are getting the product from other people, so definitely the product is going to be more expensive, which means that Apple is supposed to be expensive. Okay, I remember Apple used to be like $3,000, $4,000, but right now, okay, I really can't believe $999 for US dollar for a MacBook Air with a super high spec. Even the lowest tier, the spec is super good. Okay, the spec is super. Okay, I feel that I'm right now like selling a MacBook, but anyway, that is my whole conviction about Apple. I'm really excited about the new product lineup, and I do see that they will actually eat up quite a fair bit of the market share with this new product. And of course, like what Apple mentioned, okay, the last time Apple did such a major shift, that was 15 years ago. Okay, when they actually shift from their own operating system, they converted into Intel. That was 15 years ago. And right now, they are doing a major shift. This is a major shift coming from Apple. So which means that after this, with the new M1 chip, they are going to come up with even better product, even faster processor, even better battery. And also, the next lineup from Apple, I don't know, maybe next year. Again, they will be ahead of the competitor. That I'm pretty sure of it. Right, so that's the end of my sharing for today. Okay, but I also want to hear from you guys. Okay, how many of you after today's, right, you're confident in this particular company actually increase one? Okay, if you're confident in Apple increase, can you type 888? If you're confident in Apple decrease, can you type 777? Okay, if after listening you feel like, wow, I don't like Apple, okay, you can type 777. But if you feel that, wow, I also want to buy Apple MacBook already, then you type 888. And of course, if you like the sharing, okay, something like this, please also do help us to share with your friends so that they can actually benefit from this as well. Just share with them the Telegram link, which is t.me/ultimateinvestorsg, as we actually share with you more information and more updates in terms of the stock market. Okay, and of course, like I said, with Biden winning the race, winning the presidency, market is actually heading to the moon. Okay, market is heading to the moon. So I would say the stock market right now is really, really exciting. So if you are not invested yet, please go and open an account. I don't care which account you want to open with. Just go and open a brokerage that can invest in US market. All right. And I will say that there will be a lot of opportunity that will be coming up in the stock market, and we will be sharing more of such lobang, okay, into the Telegram in the coming few days as well. So with that, okay, that's all from me.